Hello guys, this is part 128 of ASP.NET video tutorial. In this video, we will discuss about absolute expiration, sliding expiration, and cache item priority parameters of the insert and add method. Let me show you the presentation slide. Okay. In part 127, in part 127 of ASP.NET video tutorial, we discussed about different ways to cache application data. There are three ways we can either use direct assignment, insert method, or add method. Insert method has got several overloaded versions, so some of the parameters are optional. Whereas add method has got no overloaded version, so we need to supply values for each and every parameter. In this video, we will be talking about absolute expiration, sliding expiration, and cache item priority parameters of these two methods, insert and add. So when we cache an item using the insert or add method, we can also specify how long we want that item to be cached. And basically there are two ways to do that. We can either use absolute expiration or sliding expiration. So what is absolute expiration? It is date time object that specifies when the data should be removed from cache. When we specify absolute expiration, the cached item will expire at that time, irrespective of whether the cached item exists or not. Let's understand what we mean by this with an example. So here we caching this data set. So here we are caching this data set using products data. So the next parameter is cache dependency. So the next parameter is cache dependency, for which we are passing null, at the moment. We will be talking about cache dependency in a later video session. The next parameter is the next parameter is absolute expiration parameter. Look at the data type, it is a date time data type. Look at the data type, it is date time object. So it is date time object that we specify. Basically when this item is going to expire from cache, okay, let's say for example I want this item to stay in cache only for 10 seconds. Then I'm going to specify that using date time dot now so date time dot now, which is going to return this current date time. To that I want to add 10 seconds, meaning I want this item to be cached for the next 10 seconds. Okay, now since I am using absolute expiration here, I am specifying cache dot no sliding expiration. For sliding expiration parameter. For sliding expiration parameter. So let's go ahead and run this. So we have this code. In the button click. Save it and run it. So we have this code in the button click. So when I click this button, the item is retrieved from database cached. Okay, so when I click this, and I again click it, it is still from database. No. So it is, I clicked it again. Okay, so when I click this again, now look at this, I got rows from cache. I keep clicking, I get it from cache as long as the items stay in cache. Now every time you click this button, we are actually retrieving it from cache. Retrieving it from cache. So irrespective of, I think 10 second has passed now. That is why it is retrieved from database. If I click it again, so it's retrieved from cache now. So I keep clicking it, I get it from cache. Okay. Now every time you click this button, we are actually retrieving it from cache. So irrespective of whether we are accessing that item from the cache or not, okay, once we cache that item, it is going to stay in memory only for 10 seconds, and it does not really matter whether you access that item or not when it is cached. That is absolute expiration. That is absolute expiration. But what is sliding expiration? So what is sliding expiration? We need to go back. So what is sliding expiration? So it is time span object. So it is time span object. First of all, there is a data type difference. Data type difference. Absolute expiration, we use date time. Absolute expiration, we use date time object. For sliding expiration, we use time span object. So a time span object, and that identifies how long the data should remain in the cache after the data was last accessed. So once you know whatever is the time that you have last accessed it from cache, from that point on, how long do you want that item to stay in the cache? Okay, that's what is specified by sliding expiration. Okay, so let's use sliding expiration. So if I want to use sliding expiration, so let's use sliding expiration. So if I want to use sliding expiration, the first thing I have to do is I have to specify cache dot no absolute expiration for absolute expiration. So let me remove this cache dot no absolute expiration if I want to use sliding expiration. The first thing I have to do is I have to specify cache dot no absolute expiration for absolute expiration parameter, and I specify sliding expiration using a time span object. So time span dot time span dot, let's say I want to cache this for 10 seconds. I am going to specify time span dot from second 10, from second 10. So let me run this. Let me run this again. So save it and run it again. So once I click the button, get product data, that is when this item will be cached, and from that point it is going to stay in cache for the next 10 seconds. Now let's say, for example, 6 seconds have elapsed. Now if I click this, once again from the point on, from the next 10 seconds, again the item will be cached. So every time you access the item, from the cache, from that point, it is going to be retained in cache for 10 seconds. So if you click, so 10 seconds has not passed yet. Now if I click now, look at here. So from the cache, from that point, it is going to be retained in cache for 10 seconds. So that is sliding expiration. But whereas in absolute expiration case, it does not really matter whether you access that item from the cache or not. From the time you have cached it, it is going to stay in cache for that duration. That is absolute expiration. Okay. Now another important point. To keep in mind is, you can use any of these techniques. You can either use absolute expiration or sliding expiration. You cannot specify both of them at the same time. So what is going to happen if you specify both of them? What is going to happen? if you specify both of them. We already have sliding expiration. We already have sliding expiration here. Let me go ahead and specify absolute expiration as well. So date time dot, so date time dot so date time dot now dot date time dot now dot add second. So here we are specifying both absolute expiration and sliding expiration. So here we are specifying both absolute expiration and sliding expiration. Let me close this. So here we are specifying both absolute expiration and sliding expiration. So now when I build this solution, now I build this solution. Look at this build solution succeeded at the status bar. You can see build succeeded at the status bar. So we don't get a compile time error or build error. So we don't get a compile time error or build error. But then when I actually run this application and then when I click that button, so let me save this and now run this application. So when I actually run this application and then when I click this button, that is when I get an error. So we get a runtime error. In case if you specify both absolute expiration and sliding expiration, look at this. When I click this, I get a runtime error. I click that button already, stating absolute expiration. Stating absolute expiration must be date time max value, or sliding expiration must be times span .0. Okay, so the next parameter that we'll discuss about is cache item priority. Next parameter is so we will discuss about is, so the next parameter that we discuss about is cache item priority. So what is this cache item priority? Now we know that if we want to control how long we want to cache an item, we can either use an absolute expiration or sliding expiration, but that is only an indirect control that we have over the cached item. But keep in mind, anything the web server is running low, but keep in mind anytime the web server is running low on memory, and if it requires more memory, it may remove cached item that may not have expired. However, the order in which these items are removed from the cache is determined by cache item priority, and we specify cache item priority using cache item priority enum. Using cache item priority enum. So if you look at this, so if you look at this, this add method and insert method has got another parameter called cache item priority. Look at that. After sliding expiration, the next parameter is cache item priority. And if I right click on that enum and then say go to definition, if I go to definition, you can actually see all the enums. You can actually see all the enum. Enum members. You can actually see all the enum members. Cache item priority. It is enum. Cache item priority. It is enum. So these are the values. And if you look at this low, below normal, normal, above normal, high, not removable, default, not removable. So obviously this is the highest priority. Higher priority, not removable, and then followed by high priority, above normal, normal, and the rest of them. And you also have a clean summary. Here what each priority means, and you have the clear summary here what each priority means. But basically, let's say for example I have 3 data set. For example, I have 3 go back to the copy this. So let's say, for example, I have 3 data set that I am caching. Let's say that as 1. Let's say that as 1, 2, 3. Let's say, for example, here I am specifying this as not removable. And maybe this one as high, and maybe this one as high, and this one as low. For example, so obviously if you look at this one, there are, obviously if you look at this one, there are, let's say this is D1, this is dataset 1, DS1, DS2, DS3. So we have 3 data sets. So we have 3 data sets. Let's say, for example, we are caching with these priorities. Okay, low, high. Okay, low, high, not removable. Now let's say the web service is running. Now let's say the web service is running low on memory, but these cached item time has not expired. But these cached items time has not expired. Okay, they will have time to be retained in cache. But then, however, at this point the web server is running low on memory. So which item is it going to remove fast? It is going to remove the item that has got the lowest priority. In this case, DS1. In this case, DS1 will be removed first. Okay, because its priority is low. And after that, if the web server is okay with the memory, it is not going to remove both of this. It is not going to remove both of these, high and not removable. But in case even after removing this item, if still the memory is not sufficient for the web server to do its function, it is going to remove further items. But then it will first remove, between these two, high and not removable, between these two. It will decide which one has got high priority using this parameter. Using this parameter object, obviously not removable, has got the highest one, so it removes the data set that has got this one, data set 2. In this case, and then finally, even after that, it is, if it is not sufficient, it is going to remove data set 3. So basically, cache item priority enum is going to determine the relative importance of cached items. But then remember, it is only an indirect control that we have over cached item. Okay. So basically we have discussed about so basically we have discussed about absolute expiration, sliding expiration, and cache item priority. That's all for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.